Hello everyone, Time to Grind here, and welcome to another The TTG Show. Now, on today's episode, I wanted to talk about the recent changes and controversy that's been encompassing Rainbow Six Siege. Now, if somehow you don't know, Rainbow Six Siege is a first-person shooter made by Ubisoft, and it's kind of like CSGO, except it's not. It's pretty much there's attackers and defenders, and the defenders like place traps and stuff, and the attackers like break through the house and can break floors and walls and stuff. And it's a really tactical game, and it requires a lot of patience and stuff. And the game's very, very fun because of how unique it is. One thing is the game has always been pretty glitchy. There's been several issues with the game. There's been several bugs and stuff, a couple balance issues, not too bad, but just a lot of like bugs all around. And so much so that eventually, a couple months ago, instead of making the normal operations that they've been making every year, or every couple of years, or not every couple of years, a couple times per year, which is a new map, 2 new operators and stuff like that, they actually delayed everything and instead did something called Operation Health. And that was pretty much so like, hey, we're just going to take this time to just fix as many bugs as we can, make the game a lot better. And Operation Health ended a little bit ago, and it was actually overall pretty successful. There is a couple bugs still here and there, a couple of them are still big, but overall the game is in a lot better place than it was before, which was the point of Operation Health. And they've been continuously updating the game. Now, what's been controversial lately is originally they had this thing, in terms of weapon pattern sprays, they had this thing where before the spray patterns were kind of random. So you would fire and then the game would kind of determine where would the next shot go within, a set like diamond as an example, and it would kind of be random. And the problem is the reason why they're changing anything at all is because apparently the difference between the field of view between weapons consoles and PC, it meant that changing anything about the game's like first-person perspective, it made it where sometimes bullets didn't actually land where the reticle was, and sometimes it was pretty huge. And so there's a lot of more complicated stuff going in this. But one of the main things is that they decided to, instead of having that random pattern where you'd be firing a gun and then the game would decide randomly, within like a diamond where the next shot would go, they're going to have preset sprays. And in order to make it like not super complicated, every single gun isn't going to have its own weapon spray. They actually kind of put them in their own categories. So like as an example, the AUG A2 and the Type 89 F2, the C7E, AR33, a lot of this stuff, plus more, are all in this one category that have the same recoil pattern sprays. And there's pros and cons to it, but it was definitely one of the more controversial topics. And obviously CSGO has been doing this. It's been doing this since the beginning of time. There's recoil pattern sprays, and eventually once you get to learn those sprays, hey, I need to actually control them. So like as an example with an AK, if the spray goes up and then it does some stuff, you might be like, okay, well I'm gonna just aim at the chest, and then it'll like go up to get a headshot. Or say you want to aim for a headshot at the beginning, you aim for a headshot, and then you have to like manually move your mouse kind of down to accompany the fact that your shots are going up if you want to continue trying to go for a headshot. And it's overall made CSGO a very, very tactical game, and it works very, very well in CSGO. Now, a lot of the Rainbow Six Siege community was saying, hey, we understand it works very well in CSGO, but Rainbow Six isn't the right game for that. This is very bad. A lot of people were bringing in the possibility of macros being a thing, but I don't think that's going to be too big of a deal considering, overall it wasn't the worst thing in CSGO. Obviously like there's cheaters in CSGO, but a lot of the times it's like just straight up things like, aimbot, wall hacks, stuff like that. But a lot of things people were saying was, first of all, the time to kill in Rainbow Six Siege is extremely short. And that's true. Like you will die in like a matter of like a quarter of a second. It's actually like very, very short. So a lot of people are like, hey, the weapon sprays you're now adding, the enemy's going, as long as you're shooting decently well, the enemy's gonna die before the new weapon sprays even matter. And a lot of people were like, well, if they don't matter, then why are you guys mad? And it's just, people are really just not liking change. And personally for me, I've played a lot of CSGO. I mean, like, a lot. Like, I've probably played, I mean, not as lot as a lot of other people, but I have about, you know, like 800 hours in CSGO, and I only have, like, around 75 hours in Rainbow Six Siege. I've been playing it a little bit more, but, in my opinion, like, in CSGO, the weapon sprays, it feels like the maps themselves are just a lot more wide open, and, there's a lot more very long range, you know, interactions with the enemy. So weapon sprays actually kind of sort of matter. So you can't just continuously hold down mouse 1 and kill someone from very far away as you. A lot of times you'll have to like burst fire your weapons manually, or like semi-auto your own guns just by like constantly pressing the fire button rather than holding it. But Rainbow Six Siege, it actually, most of the time, it's very short to mid-range combat. Mainly because the defenders, they can't actually leave the house or building or whatever they're in. If they leave the house or building, after 2 seconds, it alerts every attacker and says, hey, this person's outside, here's where they are. And it actually gives all of the attackers pretty much wall hacks on that person. You get to see exactly where they are outside of the map, because defenders are supposed to stay inside the building and defend. And so because of that, most of the buildings, there are, you know, a couple long hallways here and there and stuff like that, but overall it's pretty short to mid-range, and shotguns, as an example, and SMGs are very powerful. And also, one thing to talk about that is the recoil on shotguns, pistols, DMRs, and some low fire rate SMGs. They haven't fully reworked the sprays yet, because they said they either, like, the changes that they're making aren't either too impactful to those guns, or, like, you know, at all, pretty much like shotguns and stuff like that. They don't matter really that much. But one thing is, after Ubisoft heard a lot of, you know, controversy coming about it, they did say, like, hey, we're listening to the community, the feedback, this is the change we made, but, you know, we're very willing to tweak things, as an example. So it seems like this is the new way the game's gonna play, but, like, they're listening to feedback if, like, say a certain weapon sprays is too ridiculous. And a lot of people, I just want to bring up another kind of argument a lot of people have been bringing up in terms of saying they don't want the new weapon sprays and they want the randomized ones, is they say, in the game, if you have weapon sprays, you're either learning the sprays and then just using them, or you're, if it's random, you're having to adapt to it. And to that, I say it's a little far-fetched. I mean, obviously that is technically true, because if there is a set weapon spray, then yeah, you will just learn it, not really much adapting. And then if it's random, you're just always having to adapt. But when you're firing an assault rifle in Rainbow Six, before the changes, and it's all just random, you can't really tell exactly where it's firing. You can't, because it's random, you can't really adapt too much. Like, with the weapon spray, you know it's going to go up, so you know, oh, okay, well, if they're, like, jumping, I then need to move my mouse in this way, because my bullets are eventually going to go up, and they're jumping, so, you know, I might need to move it this way. But when it's random, if they jump, I mean, yeah, you need to move your cursor above there, but you don't really have, like, a set way to do it, because all the bullets are still going to be random. They're still going to be random in that diamond. And on top of that, for them saying that by there being a weapon spray, there's not any adapting at all, I think that's not true at all, because of the fact, like I said, you know, the enemies move, and so not only are you having to adapt to your weapon spray, but you're having to adapt to that weapon spray in correlation to how the enemy is moving. So if they start sprinting to the left, but you know that your weapon spray might eventually start you know, firing to the left a little bit, once it reaches its top, you might move your cursor a little less. But, I mean, overall, though, just because I think that I do kind of agree with Rainbow Six Siege in terms of, not Rainbow Six Siege, but in terms of the fact that I don't know if we necessarily need the recoil patterns, mainly because I think they're very helpful for long range and stuff like that, but we don't have too much of that in Rainbow Six. I mean, maybe if we, you know, get some more in the future. I mean, we do have a couple maps that have some pretty long range, but most of the time it's short to medium range. Now, on the flip side, though, is I don't think there's technically anything bad, in my opinion, to adding the recoil patterns. I think overall people will get used to it, and I think right now a lot of people are just kind of like scared of change. They're like, oh, you know, CSGO does this, we're not CSGO, we're different, I hate CSGO, I don't want to do that. And they're more thinking of it as, oh, this is CSGO infecting Rainbow Six Siege, and you know, the games, I don't play CSGO because I don't like that, I play Rainbow Six because it's this. But I don't think it's going to change too much. I think once the changes fully go in, I think there will be a tiny bit of learning experience. But because of the fact that Ubisoft decided to put the guns in categories of weapon sprays rather than having every single gun have its own weapon spray, was definitely the smart move, especially because of the amount of weapons they have, and then the fact that they're continuously adding new weapons. So they probably don't want to have to come up with a new recoil spray pattern, you know, all that stuff. Every single time they make a new operator. But yeah, overall, I think it's something that doesn't impact too many things, and I think overall people are just kind of jumping the bandwagon, and they're just like, hey, the CSGO does this, I don't want CSGO to infect our game, I like my game the way it is. And I think it overall won't change too many things, but I think it is definitely impactful enough where you can't just ignore it. Like, it is going to be a thing that new players have to learn, especially at higher ranks and stuff like that. But I don't think it's going to be anything as bad as people are saying. People are like, oh, this is going to kill Rainbow Six Siege. I personally don't think so. I don't see it all. I mean, I might be wrong. I just overall don't think it's going to be that big of a difference, especially because of the fact that, you know, the community managers have made it clear that the developers are listening to feedback, you know, for future changes. And I think especially because of that, say a recoil pattern is too ridiculous and the gun's like terrible because like nobody can use it, you know, they'll definitely change it. So it's not like this is set in stone or anything. I mean, the recoil system, new one probably is, but all the specific actual points aren't, most likely. But yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. I personally don't think CSGO's recoil system is infecting Rainbow Six Siege as people are saying it is. But you know, I may be wrong. I don't play enough Rainbow Six, or as much Rainbow Six Siege as a lot of these people saying these things. But yeah, so I'd love to hear your guys' opinions in the comments down below. Do you guys hate the new recoil system? Are you guys okay with it? Are you guys actually really like it? Let me know in the comments down below, because I definitely would like to hear your guys' opinions. On top of that, if you guys have any topics or things you think would be interesting for me to talk about, let me know in the comments down below as well. And if you enjoyed this video, then consider leaving a like down below and subscribing to see more content and news. And like always, guys, see you next time.